how these fires are going to run. We'll run into some more examples of how this is going to work for some reinforcement in a little while. Alpha Charlie, you're starting off with OEC1. In that number 2 position now is what we're calling the medical operator. We had the radio operators in Alpha Alpha and Alpha Bravo. Now we got the medical operator in Alpha Charlie. Okay? And now you got meds 3 through 9, the same number of med groups that we had before. They're just in a different numbering order. 10 through 14, we have some national talk groups that are on there. They're going to reappear in the fleet map, so we'll talk about them where they reappear on the fleet map. 15 is local and 16 is PD citywide. Citywide PD is just like the citywide PD that you have in that UHF radio. You go to it only after OEC tells you to go to it. If you have a need to talk to the police that's responding to your call, you simply tell your regular TAC operator. So if you're on Alpha Bravo 3, you tell them that you need to talk to the PD unit, and they'll tell you where to go to talk to them. They may tell you to go to that Alpha Charlie 16. They may just simply tell you to go to TAC 13, and they'll patch them into you. Okay? We got a lot more options now. We got 240 talk groups, so there's things that we can do, places that we can go to look at to give us that ability to, be flexible. Okay, 15, that's local. Alpha Charlie 15 is what we call a local. Think of it as simplex, where you're not hitting the towers. It's just radio to radio, like it says. So it's got limited range. It's not line of sight, but it is limited range. So how can we use this? Well, one way we can use it is for backing up an apparatus. If you're on Alpha Bravo, Alpha 2, because you're listening to runs, and a call is being dispatched, but the guy's backing you up and he needs to say stop, he can't do it because the calls are being dispatched. If you're on an active incident and you're leaving the scene but you need to back up for it, if somebody else is talking on that same talk group because they're doing whatever they're doing on their call, again, the guy can't say stop because, they're talking. So you go to local, nobody is going to interfere with your communications. So that guy backing up the apparatus can be on local, the guy in the cab can be on it, and now he'll hear left, right, or stop. Another way you can use it on a call is, we give the example of elevator rescues. You got the truck crew wherever that car is stuck, you got the engine crew going up to the elevator motor room, and now they can communicate with each other and let them know when the power is cut to get the people out safely without having to listen to the chatter that's going on your dedicated talk group. Now you still want to leave an EO on there so that they can communicate with OEC if they're calling to say you've got a medical issue with the person in the car, or they call to say a second elevator is stuck at that location, or rescue is calling you with information. Leave somebody on there to communicate with them. But now you can communicate within your group there. Another way to use local is training. You're doing some training there in your district. Now y'all can talk with each other, especially if you're doing like a water supply evolution or something like that and y'all are spread out, but the EOs need to communicate with each other. You can do it on local, and as long as you're more than a couple of miles away from anybody else, you can take the example of District 8 is doing a training downtown, and then District 28 is training at Greenway Plaza. They're far enough apart from each other to where they're not going to interfere radio to radio. They both can go there. And this is the one talk group that you can go to without OEC's permission. Now you got to keep in mind that OEC cannot call you on there. So if you're in service doing this training, you need to make sure somebody's monitoring Alpha 2 or Alpha Bravo 2. But if you're out of service, it's probably still a good idea to have somebody monitoring that talk group just in case things go bad in the city and y'all need to go back in service. Okay, Bank B. Bravo Alpha, this is arson and inspection primarily. If you go into this section right here and you try and talk on any of the red stuff there, you're going to get a key fail tone, and it'll sound like this. It'll say, there's your tone, and it'll say key fail on your display. And it's going to play that tone every 10 seconds. The arson talk groups are restricted, so you're not going to be able to work on there. In they've got a repeat, again, of OEC1 citywide dispatch, and then they've got that citywide PD and that local. So there's no difference between this local here in Bravo Alpha 13 or that local that we just saw on Alpha Charlie 15. It's the same deal. It's just like OEC1. We're repeating it for the convenience of the user. That way the arson group and the inspection group, they don't have to navigate out of their bank B. We don't have to navigate out of bank A for our suppression activities, and they don't have to navigate out of bank B for that. Now the one thing that we might want to navigate there is for that training academy. They've got 3 of them there, 14, 15, and 16. So if you go out to the academy for any kind of training evolution, whether you're doing something in the flashover chamber, you're doing something in the burn building, something in the simulator, or something in the drill tower, or somewhere out on the premises, like the hazmat drills that we just did for our annual drills, we can go on these talk groups. And they work in that southeast quadrant only. Okay, Bravo, Bravo. Everything we've talked about up to now, those 4 talk groups are all 700 megahertz dedicated public safety networks for the city of Houston. Now everything we're going to talk about is 800 megahertz. It's still City of Houston managing the system, but it's 800 megahertz and it's only on 7 towers. The dedicated public safety was 48 towers. So we've got 4 talk groups here that are dedicated for police and 4 that are dedicated for fire. We can use those for events like, say, we got a warehouse fire, it's gone defensive, and now it's been tapped out and everything, but we're leaving 2 trucks and 2 pumpers for a surround and drown for several days to make sure it doesn't rekindle or anything like that. Say it had cotton in the warehouse, we want to make sure that that doesn't rekindle. We can go off on one of these talk groups and do that. The 2 through 8, NBA was in town, they were on these talk groups. Any kind of convention or festival or whatever can be done on those things is there, and they can be communicating. Bravo Charlie, we have 14 incident command talk groups that are here. Again, long-term events, primarily outside simply because it is not guaranteed in-building coverage. The 48 tower system gets you the guaranteed in-building coverage, and this one does not. So what else could we use it for besides that warehouse on the surround and drown? We could also use it for the fires that they had last summer out there in Bush Park on the far west side, right off of I-10. We had grass trucks out there and boosters and whatever for days and days and days. You can get it off the Southwest Tactical Talk groups and put them on here, and now they can function without it taking up the regular talk groups, but OEC can still monitor the situation. This is where it shows up here in that Bravo Charlie in the yellow. Just letting you know, we got 14 more of them here in Echo Alpha. And yeah, the mic picks that up. No, that's okay. Okay, Bank Charlie, he can edit that part out. Bravo Charlie, the main thing you need to know is that this is Harris County's property. They give us permission to put this part of their fleet map into our system, but we got to have permission to use it. We can't change the order of anything. So the biggest problem here is what we might use Harris County mutual aid 1 through 10. These numbers are not going to match up with our talk group numbers. So if you go to Harris County mutual aid number 1, that is talk group number 5 on your list. Okay? So, and you'll have about a 1% chance of actually having to use something like this. Charlie Bravo, same thing here. A 1% chance of using this. How might we use it? These are those national talk groups that were required by the FCC. This is what's making everything possible for this interagency operability, because we are the exception. We've got all these XICS and YICS and all these other talk groups that the city of Houston has created. But small cities and small departments, they can't afford all that stuff. So they got to rely on what the federal government has provided. And this is how something like this you could use out there at the forest fires that they had out in Bastrop, Texas last year. All these different departments that are working together for a unified command can come together and work off these talk groups here and do something like that. Another way is, for us, is 4 years ago when we had the hurricane come in and hit, Galveston made a bad fire. They used all their resources. We ended up setting a task force down there. In today's radio system, all we need to know is, are they on 700 megahertz or 800 megahertz? They make that communication. The district chief calls Galveston, says, HFD District 70 calling Galveston Fire Department on 8 call 90. What tack do you want us on? That Galveston fire dispatcher comes back and says, we want you on 8 tack 93. Everybody looks it up on their fleet map, and now they can all communicate with that Galveston fire dispatcher as if they were in the Galveston Fire Department. So we could do something like that. Pearland is not in Harris County, but we could easily be sending somebody from District 26 or District 46 to mutual aid with them and do it on something like this. Charlie, we've got, this is state of Texas stuff that's been put in there. It's monitored by Harris County. Again, this could be used for those Bastrop forest fires that they had last year. How we might use this, I really don't know because we have so much available to us. So again, that's an example. If we were to send a task force over there, then our radios would be able to communicate on something like this. Delta. On Delta Alpha, we have a repeat of those national 700 and 800 calls. We also got a repeat of a couple of the Texas. In this number 16 position is what we're going to be looking at, that Delta Alpha 16. That is where you will see the latest updated software code, and all it is the month, the date, and the year. So that's December the 5th of 12, and we'll be verifying that date code with your radios later. Delta Bravo, main thing you need to be aware of here is that SEMA talk groups are now available in all HFD radios, not just limited to the ones that were right there either in District 20 or District 26 or District 45 for just a limited few. Now it's not a separate radio. Same thing here in Delta Charlie. Delta Charlie is special ops stuff for hazmat and rescue. This is stuff that Homeland Security requires them to have, and they had it as a separate radio. Now they will have it as a part of the regular radio system. It's just going to be key failed for us. Here it is. We just blew through all this stuff in the blue, the county, state, and federal talk groups, and then in the yellow is HFD Special Ops again. Okay, Echo Alpha. This is just a sister group to the XICS. This is YICS. We've got 14 more of those talk groups there that are City of Houston property. Again, it's 800 megahertz. It does not give you guaranteed in-building coverage. It's very good for extended or long-term incidences to where you can free up those quadrant talk groups. And here it is in the yellow again. This could also be a backup to if HFD East and HFD West go down, then one could be HFD East would probably end up in that Bravo Charlie, and HFD West would probably end up in that Echo Alpha, because that's City of Houston property. And that's something that could end up changing as well. They could update a fleet map, and then they could end up deciding to move that YICS to where it's right next to that XICS, to where they're side by side, so that in the event that it is a backup, they're still side by side. So Echo Bravo. When we go into this on March the 20th, as the bulletin says, it's going to be these same 16 talk groups that you have in the UHF system right now. None of that changes. What does change is how you get into simplex. On your existing radio, you make that lock, what we have as the locking switch is what you use for simplex. But now we're going to be changing into what we call direct mode. So you're going to be taking your radio, and you need to make sure that you are in Echo Bravo 1 through 8, because if you're anyplace else, it won't happen. But you need to simply make sure you're unlocked and that you're in that 1 through 8 and hit your button.
Direct.
It'll tell you direct, and on your display screen, you'll see this symbol show up, the 2 lines with an arrow pointing through it. When you get it in there, lock your locking switch back into place, and then you're good to go. When you're ready to get back out of it, the incident is over, you need to unlock it, hit the button again. It doesn't say anything, and then your symbol goes away and you're done. If you try to change it, if you're in medical, you'll get bonked. If you try to change it with it locked, you'll get bonked. Or if you go into another bank, like say you're in Alpha.
Alpha, Bravo.
And you try and hit it, locked or unlocked, you won't be able to do it. Any questions? Okay. Okay, so the main thing is we got 240 talk groups. Go wherever OEC tells you to go. We're going to be setting up those patterns, and we'll reiterate those patterns of Alpha, Alpha 3, Alpha Bravo 3, Alpha, Alpha 10, Alpha Bravo 10. We'll go over that a bunch more times. Main thing is remember, our radios have that unique identifier, but we got another player in town. It just doesn't show up at OEC. Now it shows up, it's what's called the NOC, the Network Operations Center. And that Network Operations Center, their job is this, to make sure our radio system is working correctly. So they're responsible for that 700 megahertz public safety, that's police, fire, and EMS. And then they got to do the 800, which is everybody else in the city, plus those backup talk groups that we had for incident command. Okay, so if your radio gets lost or stolen, you want to make sure you report it to OEC right away, and then the NOC Center can send it to 8 Dynamic, and that person, when they try to talk on it, it will only talk on 8 Dynamic to them, and they will not be able to shut their radio off. Okay, and we have GPS that can track the radio. They didn't buy Motorola's GPS package product, but they can take a generic GPS product, take the code from the radio, put it in there, and they can track the device. Questions? No? Okay, so our quadrant system. Here's those boundary lines that we were talking about. I-45 north of downtown, 288 south of downtown, and then east and west is I-10. Okay? Now, the blue circles don't give it enough justice. We talked about it being a quadrant system. But really, so if you're on OEC 1 or you're on citywide dispatch number 2, you're going to broadcast on all 48 towers over this whole area. And your signal, because we've got towers not just inside the city, but all along the edge of the city as well, the signal goes well beyond it. So for that very reason, what you transmit, if you're transmitting up here in the northeast quadrant, you're lighting up the 12 towers that are for the northeast quadrant, your signal is going to go well beyond there. So your signal may go as far as southwest as, let's say, station 48, okay? Or if you're in the northwest quadrant, your signal may go as far as station 70 on the southeast. At the very least, it's going to go to 29s, but it might quite possibly go as far as station 70. Okay, your signal, if you're in the southeast quadrant, may go as far northwest as station 67 or to station 49 on the west side. Okay, if you're in the southwest quadrant, you may go as far as station 56. It may not go quite that far on a bad atmospheric day, but if you're inside that magical loop of 610, everybody is going to hear everything from every quadrant. So it doesn't matter what you're assigned to. If you switch over to that talk group, you're going to pick up and receive and transmit in that area. You may be out here at station 70 and you may not be able to transmit, but you'll be able to receive from other areas. Now, 70s is kind of a gray area, but definitely in Clear Lake, you're not going to be picking up what's happening over in that northwest quadrant. Or if you're at 68s or 59s, something like that, you're not going to be picking up what's happening in that northeast quadrant. Same thing with Kingwood. Kingwood is not going to hear what happens in beautiful southwest Houston, okay? And if you're making a fire in District 4, Clear Lake is not going to hear what happens there, okay? Or anything in that northwest quadrant. Clear Lake is not going to hear what happens. So you got this broad overlapping coverage. When they did the radio coverage testing, they did outside testing first, and they went as far as southeast as Texas City and Santa Fe. They went all along Highway 6, all the way over to Sugar Land. And they went everything north of there, including Katy, up northwest out to Hockley, well north of the airport on the north side, and then north of Kingwood. And that's how broad that signal is, because the whole deal is they have to get that guaranteed in-building coverage. We've got high-rises over here by 90s. We've got high-rises up here by Intercontinental Airport. We've got high-rises over here by Station 53. Or maybe not a high-rise, but you've got a 6-story mid-rise. So they got to get that in-building coverage there, okay? You got them down here at NASA, you got them at Clear Lake, and with no zoning in the city of Houston, you've got office buildings that are 6 stories and taller that have to have that guaranteed in-building coverage, okay? So that's why we've got 48 towers, and we may figure out as the city grows that we need more than 48 towers. They may have to throw some more towers in there. So that they'll figure out as the city grows. So we got that 48 tower system that we're talking about, and we got that zone section that we're talking about. Now here's your fleet map. This is in color, and this is what you're going to get in your apparatus. The only thing that's different about what you're going to get in your apparatus is it's going to have orange added to the tops to show you where this works for that, and we'll talk about it when we get to that orange button later on. But you'll have your yellow is zoned, your green is citywide. So OEC1 is citywide dispatch, and then all the med groups are citywide, and then your PD is citywide. The red is restricted ones, we can't talk in that, and then that blue is county, state, and federal talk groups that we're not going to be talking in very often at all. Questions? Laminated, one for the front, one for the back. Feel free to talk. It's not going to, they can edit out any dumb questions, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it's a lot of information. Okay, so we talked about, 102 versus Engine 8. Engine 8 could go in all 4 directions, okay? So they could be responding with District 19, and they're on a Northeast talk group. They could be responding with 25s, and they're in a Southeast talk group. They could be responding with 6s, and they're in a Northwest talk group. They could be responding with 16s, and they're in a Southwest talk group. It just depends, but it's not that hard to navigate. If you look at that fleet map, then you see that remember on the apparatus radio, you hit that zone button, you change it one time from east to west or west to east, hit the house button to lock it in, and then you're just back to changing your talk group. If you're on your handheld radio, to go from east to west, you move your zone from A to B or B to A, and then back to your talk group. So it's real quick. Okay, y'all take a break. Yeah. Stretch, go pee, do whatever.
Is that in the video?
Yeah. Okay, so now we picked up, we've gone through all the zones and banks and all that stuff, so now we're going to get into the day-to-day operations, our radio operations of how things are going to work for us. We're going to be monitoring Alpha Alpha 2 or Alpha Bravo 2, depending upon which side of the city you're on. Does it matter which side I'm on? In the literal sense, no, it doesn't matter because it's the same thing. It's being broadcast in 2 places. It's the same person operating the console down here. But what we want you to do is be on the right side of the city so that you're started off on the right foot. If you're on the west side of the city and you're supposed to be monitoring Alpha Bravo 2, but you're on Alpha Alpha 2 accidentally or intentionally, and then you're supposed to respond on the south side and you're supposed to go to Alpha Bravo 10, but you're on Alpha Alpha 10, nobody's going to hear you. If you're at, say, Clear Lake, if you're on Alpha Alpha 10, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. If you're supposed to be in beautiful Southwest Houston on Alpha Bravo 10, but you're on Alpha Alpha 10, nobody's going to hear you because you're hitting the Clear Lake towers, okay, or the Southeast towers. Okay, so your MDC and your station alerting. So for the northeast quadrant, okay, you're going to hear Alpha Alpha 3. And your MDC is going to say what I like to call the whole enchilada. It tells you Northeast TAC 3 and it tells you Alpha Alpha 3. Okay, so you have both pieces of information there just in case, whichever way you like to identify with it. So OEC1 is going to facilitate all your radio traffic that is not tied to an incident. Okay, you need to go out of service for training, OEC1. You need to go out of service for a mechanical breakdown, OEC1. You need to add a radio into the system, OEC1, because you're changing into a reserve or you got a handheld replaced, OEC1. Okay, anything not tied to an active incident. Typically at the fire station, what we do is we have a walk-in at the fire station. then we're going to go to OEC1 to create a record. If you are on an incident and you're going in service and you heard another one get dispatched, then you're going to take care of that on the one that radio operator is working that active incident. So if you're at station 28 and you hear you're on that EMS run and you're about to go in service and you hear a box drop for the district there, then you just go to Alpha Bravo 10 and say, add me to that record, and they'll add you to the record. For airport index, the way I understand it is you are going to OEC1 and have them create you a record, so you can do that either way. You can go to OEC1 or you can go to that Northeast radio operator and let them create the run for you. Okay? So this is where we're communicating. Alpha Alpha 3 for the Northeast, Alpha Alpha 10 for the Southeast, Alpha Bravo 3 for the Northwest, and Alpha Bravo 10 for that Southwest. So if you need to get a TAC for a fire, you're going to make it, if you're in the Northeast, you're going to make that request there on Alpha Alpha 3. If you're at 46s and you need additional information, you're running up and down or back and forth on the East Loop there trying to find an MVA, check my callback, you make that request on Alpha Alpha 10. Okay? If you're on Ambulance 82 in Southwest Houston and you need to talk to a supervisor, you're going to make that request on Alpha Bravo 10. So if you've requested, you're the incident commander and you've requested that TAC for your fire, they're just going to tell you go to TAC 11 or TAC 4 or whatever the case may be, wherever they're sending you to. They're not going to give you that whole enchilada here. So let's do a little summary. Give me some feedback here for question number 1. Where do we go when we're doing going out of service for repairs or training? There you go, OEC1. Where do we go when we need to contact to get a reserve apparatus put into the system? There you go. And where do we need to go to talk to that supervisor? Whatever TAC you're assigned to. Very good. Okay. So what about HPD? We need to talk to the HPD unit that's responding to our call. Where do we need to call them? There you go. It's a trick question. Everybody wants to bite off onto the citywide PD on Alpha Charlie 16, but we're not going to do that. We're going to stay on whatever talk group that we've been assigned our call on. Same thing here. Bottom line is, go to wherever OEC tells you to, you're going to make your run there. Okay?
So it's no different than you're
No.
on your regular TAC channel now. I need to talk to a supervisor. Okay, go to TAC 5.
Exactly. Just like today. No procedural changes. You need to set down life flight here. They're going to tell you where to go. So like in the UHF system today, they typically tell you to go to TAC 7 or TAC 5 and talk to life flight there. Now we're going to go to one of the Harris County Mutual Aid talk groups. Okay? Charlie Alpha 5. So they may say Harris County Mutual Aid 2 or 3, whatever, 5, 6, or 7. But that's what they're going to do is tell you to go to one of those.